Stuff. Okay, good morning, everybody. You're very, very welcome to today's Our Voices event, which is being delivered by the Women Breaking Barriers project. My name is Lydia McClelland and I'm your host today, interviewing the ladies that we have with us. We've four inspirational ladies that you're going to hear from today. We've Siobhan Kearney, Johanne Jefferson, Charmaine Jones and Joe Black, and we're really looking forward to hearing their stories. As I mentioned there as you were arriving, please feel free to put questions in the chat. The questions will come to Helen Crickard and myself directly, and we will leave time at the end to deal with the questions. As I say, today's session is being recorded, so please feel free to put yourself turn off, if you want to, turn off your camera, and also make sure your microphone is muted for today's session. Okay, so let's get started. First of all, we've got first up is Joe Black. Joe is a mindset and emotional well-being coach and set up her own business a number of years ago. She offers a range of services, including one-to-one coaching, group coaching programs, guest speaking, and organizational well-being services. Joe, you are very, very welcome this morning. To get us started, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to running your own business as a mindset and wellbeing coach?
Yes, absolutely. Great to be here. So thank you for having me. Okay, so how did I get here? Well, I have always worked with people. So I started off in social care, and in my 20s as a single parent studied social work in order to have a career to support myself and my daughter. But I never really felt as if I had that connection and therapeutic input that I really wanted to have with people. And literally way back in 2008, I was reading an article in a magazine about life coaching. I'd actually never heard of it before, and it just resonated so much with me that that was the path that I took at that time. So over the years, I have worked in a professional career that moved into managing services for a large charity, accommodation services for adults with learning disability. And I did that alongside my business until I got to the point of moving fully into the business then. So that's kind of the journey.
Brilliant. And tell us, in terms of your experience to date, Joe, tell us a bit about some of the barriers or one of the biggest barriers perhaps that you faced or you've had to overcome really as a woman.
Yeah. Okay. I would say the biggest barrier has been myself. And quite often that is the case. And there's been many challenges along the way. Obviously, you know, as women, my journey has, included being a single parent, bereavement, divorce, all sorts of things that have been in there along the way. But definitely the biggest challenge has been my own self-belief. I was a very, very insecure young girl and well into my adult life. And that lack of self-belief was a major impact and factor for me and caused me to experience a lot of anxiety and hold myself back at a lot of points. I suppose imposter syndrome is a phrase that we hear a lot about, and when you're talking to women who are in business at all levels, you'll hear them talk about the imposter syndrome kicking in and having to work through that. So that is definitely something that I experienced despite my years of experience, my qualifications. I qualified as a life coach, and then I went on to master practitioner level of NLP, timeline therapy, hypnosis. So despite all that and the experience that you bring, even though there's just that doubt that you're still not good enough. And I suppose the thing that imposter syndrome is known as is that you're going to be found out as a fraud at some point and that you actually have no idea what you're doing. But it can affect us, whether you're at the beginning of your journey or whether you're, already successful in your career or business and you're, spreading into the next level, and it can kick in again. So definitely that was an impacting factor for me.
Yeah. So Joe, like you've mentioned there, obviously you're really well qualified. You've got plenty of experience. Where do you think that limiting self-belief for yourself? What did that stem from? Where did it come from? If you don't mind sharing.
No, not at all. There's a number of levels of it. There is that fear of the unknown, moving out of your comfort zone that we all find, as you expand into things unknown. So that fear comes up, that's a natural fear. Your personality, for me, I am an introverted person. I'm also very sensitive. And that can feel like anxiety, when that's who you are. So I think it's really important to know that about yourself. And then your upbringing. I was brought up, and we're all impacted by our families, our culture, everything. And I was brought up in a very religious family, and the rules were the rules. So you weren't sort of able to be yourself and shine. Everything was had a rule and a consequence.
Yeah.
And as such, for my personality type, that made me really, shut everything down to protect myself and keep safe. So
Yeah.
lots of things going on there that
Absolutely.
I've been able to become aware of. I
Yeah.
suppose the big thing being, that when we're aware of that, then we can start to work with it so that we can keep growing and moving forward. Because basically, what was happening was my whole nervous system was just shutting me down to stay safe.
Yeah.
And once I became aware of that, I was able to move forward.
Absolutely, and I'm sure there's maybe people on the call that you might be able to resonate with some of the stuff here that that Joe's obviously talking about. Siobhan's nodding furiously, and we will get to Siobhan in due course.
Yeah.
Joe, thank you so much for sharing with us today. I really appreciate it. But could you, what in terms of advice for anyone on the call today, like what's the one piece of advice you would give participants on the call today?
Okay. Well, first, I would say that, know that you're absolutely amazing, just as you are, and you are limitless in your ability. But if I could share three things.
Yeah, go for it.
So get really clear on the dreams that you have for yourself, and whatever your passion is and what like really comes through you is absolutely right for you. So get really clear on that. Number two, then believe in your ability to achieve what you want to achieve in your life. You can actually deal with anything that comes up. So, there's lots of challenges in life. I've mentioned a few of my own. You're going to have other speakers that are coming on to talk about what they have, challenges they've had, and how they, broke through that to achieve where they're at. So life comes like that, but you can deal with it, so really believe that you can do that no matter what. And number three, then create the practices that will support you with your mindset and your well-being to keep moving forward. And be well and enjoy your journey to whatever it is you want to achieve. So
Great.
hopefully those are helpful.
Yeah, no, definitely. And you said something there that resonated with me a bit in terms of the whole fear factor. I would say, like, when you're pushed out of your comfort zone, that's when the magic actually happens, because you develop and grow as a person, and that's whenever things can really be quite magical and do happen for you. So so thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay. If you have any questions in terms of what Joe has talked about there this morning, do put them into the chat and we will deal with them at the end. But we're going to move on now to Johann Jefferson. So Johann took the leap of faith into self-employment after 10 years working in marketing roles in the private sector. As she says herself, running your own business isn't a walk in the park, but the sense of accomplishment feels amazing. She's 2 years into her journey of self-employment and has achieved a more flexible work-life balance that she was hoping for in her digital marketing agency, and she trades as Ivy Hill Digital, just to give that a bit of a plug this morning as well. So Johann, you're very welcome. Just realised I think we maybe just spotlight you here. We'll just add you to the spotlight, or maybe get Helen to do that in the background just so people can see you. So Johann, you are a mum to 3 lovely kids, and you are now running your own business, Ivy Hill Digital. Tell us a little bit about your journey into self-employment.
So a lot like Joe, I really lacked with confidence and everything. So it's not something that I'd considered doing earlier on. But after missing every sports day, most nativities, missing the first day of school for 2 of my children. I thought, like, I'm fed up of this. I want to work for myself. I want to work on my own schedule, to be able to work when I'm most productive, and be able to go to those family events, and just make up my time when it suits me. I appreciate that's not possible for everybody, and especially not in every career. But for me, it wasn't good for me anymore, being chained to my desk 9 to 5 and not having that flexibility to be able to fully partake in family life. And that's what I really wanted, to get that balance.
Brilliant. So tell us a wee bit more about some of the barriers then that you've faced during your employment career then over 10 years.
Yeah, so I studied music at uni and did not have a clue what I wanted to do afterwards. Everyone's like, oh, you should be a teacher. So I applied, I got on the course, and about a week before I was due to start, I was like, I don't want to be a teacher. I don't even really like children. So thankfully didn't go through with that. But I had this notion that I wanted to be a PA. So I had high hopes of being a PA for the Prime Minister back then. Now I wouldn't work anywhere near any of them. So that was a good save. But I loved organizing things. I loved being in control of things. I loved solving problems, and it seemed like a perfect fit for me. So that's what I did. I did it really well. I had a few good jobs. And then when I had my first child, the company asked me if I would consider moving into the marketing team because I wanted a part-time role, and they couldn't facilitate that being a PA. So I thought, yeah, fine, looks fun, I'll give that a go. Got the job and absolutely loved it, and thought, why did no one tell me what marketing was when I was a teenager? And so just started to self-study, put myself through courses with the Chartered Institute, and then that I was still living in Edinburgh at that point. Then we decided to move back to Northern Ireland for me, and my husband's Scottish. And then we moved back here, and I really struggled to get a job because I didn't have a degree in marketing, and so it was really closed off. So went back to being a PA again, and picked a company that I thought was big enough that I might be able to sidestep again into marketing while I got some qualifications. So I did that. And the other challenge I faced then was, just as our house sold, I found out I was pregnant. So I had to move to Northern Ireland and find a job while I was pregnant. And I made the decision to tell the at an interview in the second stage, if I got through, I decided that I would share with them, because I just didn't, for me personally, it didn't feel right to hide it. And I still managed to get a job, which was amazing and really restored my faith in good practice in HR and everything. And the CEO that interviewed me said that he was confident I was the best for the job, and he was absolutely gutted when I said I was pregnant, because they really needed somebody for that next year. Yeah. But he didn't want to lose me, so he took me on, worked in that job for a couple of years, and then managed to move into the marketing team within that business, and got right back into the marketing stuff again, and just grew from there.
Fabulous. And I'm sure it was your heart not in your mouth whenever you decided to declare that you were pregnant. How did that feel for you?
Yeah, so I got through to the second stage of a couple of interviews, and they assured me it wasn't because I was pregnant that I didn't get the job. And interestingly, one of the jobs, I really fancied it, had my hopes set on it. And I actually met the lady who got the job a couple of months later. And she was better qualified than me and had experience in that industry that I didn't have. And so I had that assurance, actually, no, they chose the better person for that job. So yeah, it was really nerve-wracking. I've got lots of friends in the same kind of situation going for promotions, and they chose not to say, and that's totally fine. It's worked out fine for them. So it's very much a personal decision. But for me, starting fresh, I felt like I needed to start off on the right foot with that trust and integrity, that I was being totally upfront and honest.
Great. Okay, so same question for you, Johanne, that I asked Joe. What one piece of advice, or maybe 3 pieces of advice, have you got for people on the call today?
Yeah, so before I went out in self-employment, in a few previous jobs, I was in a really toxic work environment, and I didn't realize the impact it was having on me physically and mentally. And so if you are in that position and you're just dragging yourself out of bed to get to work because it's a really horrible environment to be in, call it out. And if it doesn't change, get out. As soon as I handed in my notice for that job, my palpitations stopped. I stopped feeling sick in the mornings. My skin cleared up. It was an overnight change, just knowing I was going to be free from that toxic work environment. So do it. And if you want to talk to me about it, if you want to get some, like a pep talk, please contact me afterwards. I'd be happy to do that. And the other thing is to have a good support network. Don't ask every Tom, Dick and Harry for advice. Pick a few close, trusted people that you value their input, and let them be your village, let them be your support network, and really take what they say to heart. Because without that, you can't do it on your own. We're made to be in a community. We're made to be together to support each other. So find those people and use them and be that person for others.
Brilliant advice. Thank you, Johann. And definitely in terms of that, just, you've mentioned there about the work environment and actually the impact it was having on your health. You mentioned there heart palpitations, your skin breakouts, so it's like sometimes I don't think we necessarily take stock of the fact of the working environments that we're in and what it's doing to our bodies and our families. So that's amazing. And I love the idea of kind of having a network, having your group of people that you can rely on and trust and share information with. Definitely, certainly advocate for that. Okay, thank you, Johann. If Johann has said anything there that you want to ask questions about, again, just pop it into the chat and we will deal with it at the end. But we're going to move on now to Charmaine Jones. Charmaine is employed as the Women's Spaces Coordinator, which is funded through the Department of Foreign Affairs, and she brings such a wealth of experience to her role because she's worked in the for over 20 years, she's worked in the field of good relations, peace building and community development and youth development. So such a mixed background there. She's worked at grassroots level for many years and has represented rural communities at local, regional and international level. And she's extremely well known within the sector. So if there's anybody on the call today from the community and voluntary sector, I'm sure you do know Charmaine. So Charmaine, spotlight on you now. So you've recently started your new job, as we know, with the Rural Women's Network as this Women's Spaces Coordinator, which is a fantastic kind of job title. I'm always fascinated by people's job titles. So congratulations, first of all, on your new role. But tell us a little more about your role and the journey to get to the role that you're in today.
It's been a very mixed journey, and when we're trying to reflect on where I've come from and where I am now, it sort of is hard to believe, to be honest with you. I left school and I was actually signing on the brew for 2 weeks with my qualifications and no job to go to, and I got offered an opportunity in my local community centre in the estate that I lived in, and they said, would you come on board and get involved in something called community development? And at the time, as a 21 or 22-year-old, I hadn't a clue what they were talking about. And I ended up working in the basement of a community centre with a computer and a phone, and that was the start of my journey into community work. And when I think about all the things that I've done in 22 years since, it's something that I'm very proud of, from where I started and from where I've ended up. And the new role that I have is a really exciting new role about, building women up and to support them to take a seat at the table and be involved in all levels of decision making. And with that comes confidence building and capacity building. And I'm still on my own journey of confidence and self-awareness and self-development too. So I'm not the expert in all of this, but it's about hand-holding and supporting other women to do what I do and what others do. And there's many on the call here today that do community work and peace building work, and they know it's not easy work, particularly as a woman, to do that. So it's something that I'm very, very excited about, and I can't wait to get my teeth into. But my journey has been working in local towns on interface issues, parades, bonfires, any contentious issue you can think of, I've worked on it. And then for the last 12 years working in rural communities, and now I've moved out to a rural area, so I'm now officially a rural woman myself. So it's great to be involved in all aspects of rural life.
Fabulous. It sounds amazing and really, really diverse. You sound like the woman to call if we need help with anything to do with bonfires. So obviously we know your background. You've shared with us your background is community development, and that I understand that it's very, very rewarding work in terms of the impact that you make, in the communities that you're working with. My perception, rightly or wrongly so, is that the community sector is very female dominated. And again, you can challenge me on that, but have you, tell us a wee bit more about any challenges you might have faced then within the sector, if you're okay to share that with us.
Yeah, that's no worries at all. And it's a sector that does employ a lot of women, and that's a good sign. I think there's a couple of challenges I was thinking about in relation to this. One is the impact on my physical health, and because you are in demand so much, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and communities do want, you know, you to support them and to help them through different issues, it does have an effect on your physical and mental health. And I do have to say that the amount of work that I put in the first 10 years working in interface areas certainly affected my health in the last 12 years, because I was on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it went like that for a very, very long time. So I had no family life outside of my work. My work was my life. And I think to add on to that, then I had 2 young children and I had 2 young babies, and I was involved heavily in a youth project at the time. And I have to say, hand on heart, looking back on that, I have real guilt about the fact that I wasn't really there to rear my 2 children during that journey. My husband won Father of the Year, and I can remember at the time being really supportive of him, but in the background thinking, why was that not me? I'm their mummy. But I was too busy at the time just trying to help move us out of conflict and to build communities and build up women and build up people, that became my be all and end all in the job. And at that time, the community and voluntary sector wasn't very family friendly. They didn't look after your physical or mental health so much. Pastoral care wasn't part of that. And I think, and I'm glad now looking on it 22 years later, you know, that there are more family friendly policies in place and flexible working and working from home, health, mental health and well-being stuff in workplaces to help you. I wish I had had that, you know, 10, 15 years ago, but you can just look back and reflect on that and make changes then going into the future. So I think for me, being switched on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week was a massive challenge for me.
Yeah, very, very, very intense. And again, I'm sure there's people on the call here today that kind of work, maybe recognizing that you do work in that sort of, you know, environment and the impact that makes on you, not just you personally, but the whole family circumstances as well. So, Charmaine, I'm aware you have a disability and that you're very happy to talk about that in a wee bit more detail today. So tell us a wee bit more about that, and leading on then, sorry, I'll lose my voice, leading on then to the some of the challenges you faced then with a disability, perhaps in the sector that you're in.
Yeah, well, I didn't become disabled until 2017. So I was in the height of my career at 40 years of age. And then just over a 4-month period, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. It's something that runs in my family, but I never ever thought that I would take it. And at that time, as soon as I was diagnosed, I went through a really deep grieving process in myself because I just couldn't get my head around the fact that I had this. And it affected my work and my family and all my friends. And for about 2 years, I lived in complete denial. So I just pretended that I didn't have it. I didn't hardly tell anyone, and I kept working full time. And I did over and above what I should have done with a woman with a disability, until in 2019, I took such a major relapse that I ended up in hospital and I couldn't hardly walk. I was bedridden and I was very, very unwell for 4 months. So that really was a warning sign to me that you are a woman with a disability and you do work too hard and you need to start looking after yourself. So really from about 2019 onwards, I've started a process of self-care, trying to get a better work-life balance. I'm on a immunotherapy treatment like a cancer patient would have. Every 5 months I have to take that and be off work for certain periods of time. But I'm very, very lucky in that my employer is very empathetic and sympathetic about my condition. The staff around me have learned about my condition. They support me when I don't have a good day. So I think that's a challenge, is the unpredictability of having MS, but you really do need that support around you. And they're adamant, and Nerwin is adamant that it's a part of me, but it isn't all of me. And sometimes my disability I have blocked it in my head that that's the end of my career and I should finish up now and my days are done. And then other people remind me, no, it's not. It's just one part of you and it's not all of you. So I'm very, very lucky that I have that support network around me to keep reminding me that I do have a future ahead of me, no matter if my condition progresses for the worse or not.
Yeah, thank you so much, Charmaine, for sharing that with us. Because again, I know we may have people on the call who have a disability, whether that be you know, visible or non-visible as well. So thank you for sharing, and great to hear that your employer is really supportive. You know, it's great to hear those positive news stories about the employment world and not just always negative. Okay, so what one piece of advice would you give our participants today, Charmaine?
I think I've had to learn to build myself up time and time again, particularly with having MS. You always have to constantly take the hit and then get back on your feet again as best as you can. And one person said to me one time, and it always stuck with me, and I've always took it with me into the future: how do you eat an elephant? And the answer is one bite at a time. So I'm only one woman. I can only do one thing at a time when my body and my mind's letting me do it. And tomorrow, you know, nobody has passed away because I didn't do something today. It's not life or death. So I've had to learn that tomorrow is another day, and tomorrow might be a better day for me. So just do things one bit at a time as best as I can, given that my best in any one day can be very different.
Brilliant advice. And I do think as women, we're always kind of on in fifth gear 24/7 in terms of trying to get stuff done and juggle everything and keep things moving forward. So that's brilliant advice for everybody today. Siobhan, have you got that's a high five. I thought that was a question you were going to ask us. You're celebrating what she said, are you? Great. Okay, well, we're going to move on to Siobhan Kearney now. So Siobhan Kearney is also self-employed and runs her own business at One Wellbeing. Sorry, Siobhan, I'm not doing you justice there. Which is a focus on menopause awareness and menopause workshops. Siobhan has also held really senior roles, chief executive roles, with a range of organisations across Northern Ireland, which you can share a little bit more about in a minute. You're very, very welcome, Siobhan, to today, and thank you for being one of our panellists. Siobhan, to start off with, I just want to delve a wee bit into these senior leadership roles that you've held. As I've mentioned, Siobhan has been chief executive of a number of organisations. So tell us a wee bit about your career journey to date then, to give people a flavour of who you are.
Absolutely, Lydia, and delighted to be here and delighted to see so many people with an interest in, you know, overcoming and breaking sometimes very, very personal barriers. So in terms of my career, I suppose when I left university, I had done a degree in communications, advertising and marketing. I flew off to London for a number of interviews and massive advertising agencies, thinking, right, I'm going to be the leader of the world eventually. And was sadly disappointed when my face just simply did not fit in the London scene. I always put it down to the fact that at that stage, I had a very, very, very Balachi accent. I'm just saying, I'm just putting it out there. So in terms then of what I did, so I did my degree, left that, went on to do a postgraduate master's in business development. And you know what, I honestly do think at that stage, it was like just to keep me from having to look for a job. And that was a simple fact. I loved the student life. I loved, you know, that freedom, but reality hit home when I bought a car. And so then I had to look for a job. So I suppose I started really in hyper local organizations. The first one I was based in was in Arbo, which is in County Tyrone, very, very, very rural community. But the wonderful thing about it was that sense of working in a local community, supporting that community in a very community development sort of a way. I moved then to other organizations, mostly around rural and economic development. I worked with Nerwin for many years and was a director before the wonderful Louise Coyle took over. And then the last post that I held was as chief executive of the mental health charity Aware. And sometimes, Lydia, when I reflect back in my journey, come back to something that Joe said, it was like that imposter syndrome. It was like, how did I get here? You know, I became chief executive when I was 39, and it was like, you know, oh, I got here by accident. It was all a big mistake. They didn't really, you know, listen to me in the interview process. And it was only when I began to, you know, think through, right, okay, you must pat yourself in the back for your achievements to date. You must recognize that you did not get here by accident, that in actual fact, it was from the very, very first job that I had in Arbo that I recognized, you know, where I had really, really good skills, and then moving to the next job, and then growth within the next job, and then moving to the next job. And so my career was a growth for me individually, but also in terms of my career. And I enjoyed every single job for completely different reasons. I'm very proud of my achievements in every single job, but there comes a stage in your life, and we'll talk about that with regards to the menopause. There comes a stage in your life where you just sit down and you go, is this it?
Okay. I'm looking forward to that. So just, I suppose, appreciate you know, again, senior level positions. Last job was chief executive of Aware. You've held those senior level jobs, but now you're self-employed. So what was the motivation for starting your own company?
Do you know, Lydia, it's really interesting. And I'm sure if there are menopausal women in the room here today, I took a decision which I thought was a, you know, just a decision based on what I wanted. But now looking back, it was because I was experiencing perimenopause. And it was only later that I began to be able to link the fact that I was experiencing the perimenopause. And what happened to me, I suppose, I had been working for such a long time for other people. And the daily grind of getting up out of bed at 6 o'clock in the morning, getting into the car, driving to Belfast, spending all day in the office or out and about, and, you know, even nighttime work and all of the pressures associated with holding, I suppose, a chief executive position within any organization or a senior level position within any organization. And I was emotionally exhausted, I was physically exhausted, and I was also pretty fed up. And that pretty fed upishness is actually what encouraged me to think, I think now's the time at 45, 46 years of age that I want to try something for myself. I want to break free. Sorry, I was going to start singing there, but I'll not bother. I wanted just to break free from that corporate grind, from that like having to get into the car, having to be at a place in a particular time. And it's come back to what Johan talked about as well. You know, you must be productive between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. Sometimes I'm at my most productive at 6 a.m. or 10 p.m., but there was no scope or capacity for that when you were working for somebody else. So looking back, I recognize now that actually it was my tolerance levels had decreased as a result of menopause. And you might think, you know, that's a bad thing. For me, it was a really positive thing. I began to look at things quite differently. I was looking at myself and my life and how I felt about my life and making rational and good choices for myself. And so I jumped out of a full-time, well-paid job to self-employment. And that for me was probably one of the scariest things I have ever done. Because you know what, you're taking a big risk on yourself. You're taking a big risk that what you are doing is of interest and, you know, there would be a demand for it. But you know what, I've been here now 4 years, running my own business. I look back, I pat myself in the back, say, good job, well done, Siobhan. I look to the future and I think there's more to do, Siobhan. And I'm lucky as a 51-year-old menopausal woman. I have the energy, I have the motivation, I have the desire to keep on going. And, you know, some people say, oh, the menopause is, yes, oh, frightening menopause, frightening menopause. Actually, I embrace it. I embrace the person that I am, the person that I have become. And I look forward to a healthy and successful future running my own business.
Amazing. Congratulations then on 4 years of self-employment. Well done.
Mm-hmm.
And as you said, a lot of similarities there between what Johan was saying earlier in terms of that, just the, not being in control of your own diary. And I think probably many of us are either in that space or have been in that space before, where your day is just controlled by meetings and places you have to be and things that you must do, which isn't allowing you then time to go to the school nativity or the first day of school or whatever. So certainly I can identify with that. Also being self-employed 3 years now. So Siobhan, just to delve a wee bit more into the menopause topic, the big M word, it is very much your subject expertise area. I think you're the expert matter really in that. So tell us a wee bit about the barriers then that women maybe face with regards to menopause in the workplace. And I'm mindful like it's quite a hot topic, excuse the pun, it's quite a hot topic at the moment in terms of like it's on the news, there's much more awareness of it, whereas 10 years ago this stuff wasn't talked about. It was shh, don't mention that, don't tell your employer. So tell us a wee bit about what you see are the barriers that women face with regard to menopause in the workplace.
Absolutely. And Lydia, the menopause is my absolutely favorite subject. And for a lot of reasons, for that very reason that you said, somebody needed to raise awareness of the menopause. Somebody needed to get the conversation started on the menopause. And particularly here in Northern Ireland, there's so much going on across the UK. And, there's conversations, Ireland. And I thought to myself about 3.5 years ago, well, I'm menopausal. And I want to be one of those women that's talking about the menopause openly, because there is a stigma and continuing stigma around the menopause, particularly in the workplace. And I do an awful lot of work with workplaces around destigmatizing the menopause, normalizing that conversation around the menopause. And I think for women who are going into a workplace and are afraid to say, I didn't sleep well last night. I'm absolutely exhausted today. I have brain fog. I can't concentrate. All of these things that we experience as we are going through the menopause, if you're met with a lack of understanding, it is a big challenge for you. And a lot of women at that stage in their lives, and Charmaine, you said at 40 years of age, you were at the top of your game, you were well, you were working. And I say at 50 years of age, I am also at the top of my game. I have experience, I have knowledge, I have skills that I have built up over the years, but yet a lot of women choose to leave the workplace because they cannot, number one, manage their menopausal symptoms, and number two, nobody is talking about it. And I think the key thing for us as women to break down those barriers is be open in the conversation. If an organization requires training in understanding the menopause, understanding the impact that menopause can have in women, in their careers, actually that even the ability to go into your workplace and feel understood, I think is one of the biggest and best things that can be done around the menopause. And that symptom recognition and making simple cost neutral adjustments to the workplace reduces a lot of those barriers. And just reflecting back as well on some of the things that Joe said around confidence, you know, your confidence can be impacted as you progress through your menopausal journey. Imposter syndrome, oh my goodness, it becomes so loud. The inner critic, the self-critic becomes what, and you can't actually focus on anything else other than this. And so listening to the other speakers and saying, do you know what, I am of value. I am a woman at a particular age in my life. I'm transitioning through my menopause and have that confidence. Talk to somebody. And Johan said earlier on, you know, have your wee group that you can bounce off, that you can talk to. And I think for me now in my own menopausal journey, working for myself, I have my tribe. I have my friends that I talk to openly, not only about the menopause, but about the fears and anxieties and challenges that I have working as a sole trader. You know, that sense of loneliness that you can get. But when I reflect on it all and I reflect on my menopausal journey and the choices that I made as a result of being a perimenopausal woman, I celebrate it every single day. And the challenges are there, they're real. But do you know what? The time is coming, and it's coming soon, where the menopause conversation is just going to be a conversation. That's it.
Yeah, and it's great to hear, like, I know a lot of the larger corporates have really embraced menopause and, you know, run information sessions and all that. So it's great to see that, but we need to see that right through all levels of workplace, smaller employers, employers too. Okay, Siobhan, same question for you then in terms of asked the others, just what one piece of advice or three pieces of advice might you give the participants on the call today?
Oh, brilliant. So my one piece of advice is do not think that you're stuck somewhere. And it's come back to what Johan said. If you don't like it, if it doesn't feel right, if it's making you unwell, you are not stuck, right? It may take a bit of retraining, finding your passion, what it is that you really want to do. Because I went through a lot of my career thinking this is it, this is how people do things. Only to wake up one day and go, no, it doesn't have to be this way. And just to have the courage, if you're wanting to make a change, if you're experiencing barriers, to recognize those barriers for what they are, to skill yourself up, to build your own confidence in yourself, to overcome those barriers, but do not remain stuck. If you're thinking, I want to set up my own business, certainly talk to some of us, even in the call today, who have taken that step to setting up our own business, because there's some comfort in, you know, even having open and honest conversations about what you're thinking. But my one piece of advice is, if you're stuck today, take a couple of steps, tiny steps to unstick yourself. And you know what? The world opens up in wonderful and sometimes very, very unexpected ways.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Okay, so we've heard from our four panelists. I think we need to give you a virtual round of applause, guys. That was amazing. What we're going to do now is allow time for the Q&A and comments. So in the chat, I'm seeing a busy chat here. There's 13 comments and different things being linked. So if you just give me a wee second, what I will do is run through these, if that's okay. And Helen, if you want to chip in too, please feel free to help me out with this.
Yes, certainly. There's been a lot of very positive comments. There's one here, Joe, thank you. We need to have belief in ourselves. The imposter syndrome is real. And another one for Siobhan. We all want to break free. Thank you.
That might be the theme tune. That might be the theme tune from today's event. We should have had some music.
Certainly. One, yes, Siobhan, life begins at 50. And another one here, yes, go Charmaine Jones. I have MS too. I loved hearing your journey.
Yeah.
We do have a couple of questions. Do you want me to? I know they get lost in the chat there, but there's one just for all of the speakers. Are we still stuck in long hours culture that does not fit our family and career life?
discuss. So I was going to say, maybe Siobhan, you might want to take that one first, and then we'll bring Johan in on that, if that's okay.
Absolutely. And yes, whoever asked that question, you're absolutely right. Because I think the way society is constructed, there is an expectation that you go 9 to 5. But if COVID taught us anything about our work life, about the patterns of work, and how efficient and effective you can be, and probably more effective when you can focus, when you're in your home office or wherever you are. But when I look back, even in my experience, what I did notice towards the end of my, I was going to say towards the end of my career, towards the beginning of my new and very, very enjoyable career, was that my personality was actually beginning to change. And it might be perimenopausal, but what I was noticing was that I didn't have time to spend. And I'll just leave the spend hanging there, because how you spend it is not the thing. It's actually having the time to spend doing the things that you enjoy, spending time with your family. And what I have found since being self-employed is that, yes, okay, I'm busy, but it's my busy. It's not somebody else's busy. And when I need to take time, you know, during family illness or whatever, that time is so precious. So if we are continuing on that trajectory around 9 to 5 culture, that there is a lack of trust perhaps from some employers that, oh, if you're not in the office at 9 o'clock, you're sitting twiddling your thumbs or you're watching Netflix, you know, you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing. And I think there's a real shift coming, and we are seeing a lot of reports now coming out about hybrid models of working, about, you know, people not having to come into the office like 9 to 5, 5 days a week. And I think we have a role to unstick those patterns as well, you know, to change the way of working. And certainly from a self-employment perspective, I think it's probably one of the best things that I have done for myself. I hope that answered the question. I'm not even sure if it did.
No, absolutely. You know, I certainly know from my own point of view, like I've worked in corporate roles over the best part of 18 years and I'm self-employed 3 years now, but a lot of the jobs that I worked in, not mentioning any employers' names, but it was about presenteeism. It was, you were measured as a good member of staff if you were at your desk early, didn't leave at 5 o'clock on the button. Just not conducive to family life in any shape or form. And that was what motivated me to walk away from the corporate world. And also, Siobhan, you said something there about, you know, kind of evolving as a woman, you know, so for me, I would say, you know, the woman I was in my 20s, my 30s and my 40s, and what I will become in my 50s and 60s, you evolve, your self-awareness develops, your life experiences developed. And I must admit, I'll share this personal story, but when I left my last corporate employer, again, no names, I handed in my notice. I didn't have a plan B for what I was doing next. I didn't have another job lined up, and I didn't have my self-employment business plan written by that stage. I said to my employer, and I'll say I'll put in the expletives. I said, I've put up with SH1T in my 20s in jobs. I've put up with SH1T in my 30s in jobs. And I said to my male boss, I'm now in my 40s and I do not want to put up with this SH1T anymore. And I handed my notice in. So, and 3 years on, self-employed, and really haven't looked back in terms of the work I do. Johan, what about you, just in terms of that corporate, because you're not long out of that sort of corporate environment as well? What do you think about that in terms of the 9 to 5? Is the model broken?
In some circles, yes. So people, like friends I know still in that kind of work environment, technology companies seem to have embraced more of that hybrid model, but I'm hearing a lot more from like public sector, like, just no, it's not an option anymore. Get your backside back into work. And that's what we're hearing from like the top levels of UK government. They're not trusting their staff if they're not sat in an office. So I think there's still a long way to go, but we're starting to see movements towards that. And hopefully the nationwide trial of the 4-day work week, hopefully that'll bring some benefits when that comes to a close next year. There's still a real culture of that whole having to check your emails when you're on holiday and be seen to be like so into your job that you know, I'm still going to check in, or that kind of thing. And what I'd say to that is, be the change you want to see. Just don't do it. The world is not going to fall apart unless you're a brain surgeon or, you know, actual lives depend on you taking that week's holiday to spend time relaxing or with family, with friends, whatever. It's going to be the best for you, the best for everyone, the best for your productivity, the best for your work. Just do it and be the person who starts that trend. I saw a LinkedIn post a few years ago about a company in Germany. When you're on annual leave, they automatically put out an email that says this person is on holiday, your email has been deleted, send it again when they're back on this date. And I thought, wow, isn't that amazing? Instead of coming back from holiday to 5 million rubbish emails that most of don't apply anymore, but you still got to wade through them. And it's just start having those chats. Just say to your team, look, I'm away, don't bother emailing me, I'll catch up when I'm back, we'll catch up then. Like, just be that change that you want to see.
Amazing, thank you. Funny, one little thing I did I was off for a week in August. One thing I did was actually put the snooze function on my mobile for my inboxes. I have different inboxes for different clients. I didn't switch it off after August holidays, and it's been one of the best things I've done in terms of not being disturbed by emails outside of office hours or during other activity type thing as well. So can highly recommend that. Just looking through the chat here, question actually for Joe, if you don't mind, Joe, from Trasa. So any common issues, or what are the common issues do you come across with your female clients? Maybe if we could touch upon that, because I'm sure there's kind of trends that you see or patterns that you see with the women that you work with. Yeah,
good question. Pretty much what comes up the most is patterns of, as we probably all resonate with, people pleasing and looking for validation outside of ourselves, so from other people, rather than, really trusting in your skills and abilities. I suppose that's maybe linked to imposter syndrome a wee bit, but that can show up as stress, anxiety, because you're in that self-doubt, questioning yourself. Really what you're doing is giving your power away to somebody else for them to decide if you're good enough. When you think about it, that's what you're doing, and that's a strategy. And I see a lot of women come to me with that. That's where they're coming from, and they haven't actually, when we delve into it, because as women, we're looking after everybody else in your job, your business, your kids, your partner, whatever it happens to be. We're always putting other people first, and a lot of women that I work with haven't actually taken the time to look at what their own values are, what's important to them. And it makes such a difference for you to be able to then show up with expectation that you will be respected and treated with value, so that if it doesn't happen, you can see it right away and address it, rather than questioning yourself and saying, oh, what did I do wrong, and trying to please the person. It's huge, and definitely something that's worth giving time to for all of us. So yeah, hopefully that
brilliant
answers your question.
Thank you. Just having a wee look through here, just comment from Suzanne. Sorry if we've read this one already. It's knowing that the tribe that you, sorry, my cable's annoying. It's knowing who that tribe are. We touched on the tribe thing earlier about people having your back, and having a few trusted people is better than having 15 people who aren't true people to you. Yeah, so keep your friends very, very close to you. Some words of thanks there as well. Any other questions that anybody wants raised or wants answered by the panel today?
Yeah, there is another question come in here, and it's saying, so childcare is so hard to find and expensive. Was this an issue for you? And that's obviously for all the panel.
Childcare perhaps in the working world or self-employed world?
In the self-employed world.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me, I spent most of my salary when I was employed on childcare. My kids are all at primary school. They're up a little bit, 7, 9 and 11. So my husband and I are both self-employed now. So we take it in turns between us to who gets the kids one day and the other day, and then just make up our hours either early in the morning or in the evening, or sometimes at weekends, and that works for us. We don't have family around to help with that kind of thing, but it is a huge barrier, and something that if we want to see any real change with, we're going to have to campaign and lobby our politicians and groups like Employers for Childcare, who are really active in that space. We need that to change, or it's just never going to stop. One of the worst countries in Europe for the cost of childcare, and it's just preventing women especially from fulfilling their potential and being able to do what they really want to do.
Absolutely. Like I know even from my own point of view, my 2 kids are both primary school age now, but I've spent over £45,000 in childcare in terms of maintaining those corporate jobs over the years, because the kids were in full-time daycare at £800 a month minimum, and I'm sure the costs have probably gone up since that. So that, like Johan as well, the self-employment gives me the balance to be able to do the school run. And as I say, the 3 to 3:30 slot in my diary is booked out as a recurring diary meeting in terms of doing the school run, and meetings slot in around that in terms of an online booking system. So that's really powerful, just to be able to get your kids at the school gates and not always be sending them to an after schools club as well. There's a question here in from Caroline, which she's just asked me to raise, and again, it may be one that the panel can or can't answer. She says, I'd love to know if there's anyone on the call or in the network, and of course everybody that's in the room here today that could connect her to some legal advice in relation to dealing with a toxic housing situation that's causing a lot of stress. So something linked to housing, but there may be somebody on the call here in terms of that might be able to help with that. If you're able to help, please do pop your details in the chat and we'll get that information sent to Caroline, if that's okay. Okay. Another one here, just keep an eye on time, another one here from Francis saying, maybe everyone is saying this in different ways, but I've noticed that we as women tend to totally undervalue ourselves. This may be due to a lifetime of being undervalued in general, but I wonder if this is something that resonates with the panel and if they have any examples or hints on how to overcome this. So topping up on some of the themes that we've talked about, but yeah, do we undervalue ourselves? Is it come from a tradition of being undervalued, and what we do to overcome this? So that might be one for Joe or Siobhan.
You go first, Joe.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think, with some of the discussion we've had as women, yes, we undervalue ourselves and expect to be undervalued. That's kind of the culture. So, that checking in with your own values and showing up with that expectation and challenge, and it changes it. But also, I think just society still is in that place, but there is a huge shift in that, and we have to be part of that change. So yeah, a subject that could really
we could have a whole day. We could have a whole day on that, couldn't we, alone? Yeah. And even each of the topics we've touched upon today could be a whole event in its own right. Yeah. Siobhan, anything to add to that in terms of being, are we undervalued? Do we undervalue ourselves?
Well, I think I don't know. I think there's something from a very feminist perspective about the patriarchy and how women have been, I suppose, treated over many, many, many years. So there has been this, women have not taken up positions, for example, in senior leadership roles and massive corporates. When you look at the balance of women in political positions, for example, there is an absolute imbalance. And so even the way women are talked about in the media, and I suppose in reflection over this last 6 months to a year, and when you think about, Theresa May, nudged sideways, and Liz Truss, of course, there were other reasons why Liz Truss, but it's the way women are spoken about in the media, how women are portrayed in the media. And so as young people grow up, as a young girl, when I was growing up, and even through my teen years, there was this this feeling that, women weren't as good as men, and they weren't as good at these big important jobs as men. So little wonder we undervalue ourselves. And so the way I look at it now is, do you know what? I am not undervaluing myself any further, because I have equal value as male counterparts. And I have found that even in my roles as chief executive, as director of organizations, that even in terms of, pay structures and how I was paid compared to other males in the sector, it's like, seriously, we are undervalued enough without undervaluing ourselves. So I am all for, I'm here. I am as good as anybody else. Never would say I'm better than anybody else, as good as anybody else. And I refuse to undervalue myself any longer. And some of the tips that Joe had given earlier on, about addressing that imposter syndrome. Johan, you were talking about your experience of calling out this imbalance, calling out the way women are treated differently. Actually, that's a very, very, very powerful thing to be able to do. So I'm all for, let's do it.
Absolutely.
Because I agree because I was going to say, in my journey when I started out, I worked all with men. So I worked with ex-prisoners, and I had nothing but men around me who were involved in the conflict for 20 or 30 years. And that's where my career started. And while other people were afraid of them and worried about them, I had to learn a certain way as a woman, and as a very young woman, how to deal with men in that situation. And that was the first 3 years of my real training in community work, about how men operate and think, and particularly how they deal with young women and how they speak to young women. And I didn't really see the difference in that until I was immersed in a male world, and a complete male world. And I think now that's why 22 years later, I'm really enjoying working with women, because I'm able to use that experience of that very gender-based workplace at that time, of all men around me, to help me support women in the future going forward, and not see it as a blockage to anything, but to promote themselves and promote their own self-worth in a world where men do think that they rule. We actually rule behind them, but they just don't know that, really, you know.
Absolutely. Thank you, Charmaine. And it wasn't like it was only half a century ago women had to leave work because they were either pregnant or were getting married. Like, I know my aunts who are a slightly older generation, but they had to leave work when they got married. Like, it's unbelievable when you think about that. It wasn't that long ago in the grand scheme of things. Okay, I'm going to take one more question here that's on disability. And Charmaine is asking, as someone with a disability, what can I do to find employment? I have post-grad qualifications, but when I go to an employer, all they can offer me is admin duties. So any thoughts or advice, if anybody has anything, please send it to Helen and I, and we'll get it circulated here, just in terms of roles for somebody with a disability, and obviously putting yourself forward. That's obviously a very difficult position to be in.
UCL were very good to me, which is the organisation that helps women and people with a disability in employment. They're very good for helping you support you to find employment, but they also help support to keep me in employment and to work with my employer to put in reasonable adjustments. So for anybody who is wants to get into work, I would contact your local UCL department if you can.
Great, thank you very much. Again, just very conscious of time. So firstly, let me thank all our panelists here this morning. So thank you to Siobhan, to Joe, to Johan and Charmaine. You were exceptional in terms of sharing your stories, and thank you for sharing your stories, because I appreciate they are very, very personal journeys that you're sharing with us. Just to close off today's event, just want to draw to your attention our community campaigners course. This is being run through Women Breaking Barriers. It's going to be a free online training program to support women, to give them the tools to campaign for better services within your communities. Sessions are going to be running 4 afternoons on Zoom, and it will cover things like critical thinking, communication skills, strategic planning, and how to plan a campaign. If you scan the QR code that you can see on screen, it'll take you straight to the website, and also to apply applications directly to Deirdre Quinn, who's on the call today. The dates of that, I think, have just to be firmed up, but if we can get expressions of interest then, and just to say that is a fully funded course if anybody's interested in community campaigning. After today,
that will start on the Thursday the 17th of November and run on the 4 consecutive Thursdays.
Brilliant. Thanks for keeping me right there, Johan. So thank you everybody for coming along today and giving your time. Hopefully you've taken something away from today, at least just one little nugget of information that might help you push you to the next level in terms of realizing your potential. Today's session, as you know, has been recorded, so we will be sending out a follow-up email to everybody with the recording and a short evaluation form. I know Helen has put the evaluation form there into the chat. If you're able to complete it now, brilliant. It all helps us with the funders, but it will also be in the email that we send out to you. If there's anything that you think that we can help you with in any shape or form, do not hesitate to reach out. The contact details will be in the email of the different teams to reach out to, and do even connect with people on LinkedIn as well. If you're on LinkedIn, it's always good to connect. But thank you for attending, everybody. Thank you for giving your time, and wishing you the best rest of day. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Lydia, for hosting. You've been an amazing host.
You're welcome. Thank you, everybody. Bye, everyone. Do
you want to stay on a minute or two just for a debrief?